very warm welcome. I'm Akanksha Swaroop and you're watching Hard Reset.
The COVID-19 pandemic has brought about several innovations in the field of education. I feel that the teachers have my undivided attention since I'm only focusing on understanding the concept rather than taking notes for it.
Many of us don't have a really good internet connection, so that may lead to, and that does lead to internet lags and connectivity issues.
I can attend classes from home, which saves me time in traveling. That makes it very convenient as traveling in Mumbai can be really hectic.
There are too much time restrictions in the online class with the teacher for any query we ask.
I love my online classes as I get a lot of breaks and I have to write less. I get to sit wherever I want. And what I really love about online classes is sitting in my room and studying in my favorite spot while I'm relaxed. We sometimes face challenges due to network issues.
Of course, I'm slightly worried that I might be losing writing speed since I'm typing all the time. But the plus side is that I don't have to wake up earlier to get ready for school.
My concepts were better clarified in the school. We feel exhausted because of the screen time.
We just feel good when we're in our own space.
Now, in March this year, most schools all over the world shut their doors due to the deadly coronavirus pandemic. And by the end of the month, 185 countries had closed schools, affecting 90% of the world's students. The rushed closures and the instant switch to distance learning has allowed little time for planning or reflection on both the risks and opportunities. In India, be it the availability of technology or the future of examination and evaluation online, the debate about education in a post-COVID world covers a plethora of issues. And to help me reflect on what some of these challenges and opportunities may be, I am joined by our esteemed guests. And let me introduce them to you. Uttara Singh, Director of the Shri Ram Millennium Schools, Jayesh Rajput, Educationist and former NCERT Director, Vamsi Krishna, CEO and co-founder, Vedantu and EdTech Platform, and Mr. Jiten Jain, Cybersecurity Expert. A big thank you to all of you for joining our discussion today. Now, Uttara, if I may begin with you, how has the transition to digital been for the students? Also, how do you view digital learning compared to traditional schoolings? As a working parent myself, managing a home-centered routine of online classes has been a challenge. Do share your thoughts.
Namaste to everyone. So the Shri Ram Millennium School Noida was actually the one that was first hit by this crisis in Delhi NCR. Because if I'm sure you remember, one of our parents was the one who was one of the first people, I think, in the country who was tested for COVID. And you know, even then, even though we had no plan book or we had no guidelines, we just went with instinct. And that was health and safety of the community first. And that is what I believe is equally important even today. So keeping that in mind, digital education is here and we all have to understand that this is how we have to move ahead. Nothing can replace school. That's my firm belief. And I think everybody who's a member of our TSMS family also echoes that thought, because we all are just absolutely longing to get back to our schools. But because we can't. Yes, Akanksha,
Go ahead. I do agree with you. Health is of utmost importance for us and for our children, of course. On that note, I'd also like to bring in Mr. Jayesh Rajput. Mr. Rajput, while the transition to online learning has been smooth for private schools and colleges, how are public ones adapting, considering internet access is still a challenge in our country and not every student owns a computer?
It is not correct to say that it has been smooth in public schools. It has not been smooth anywhere. A lot has to be learned, a lot has to be envisioned, a lot has to be shared with each other. And the nation as a whole cannot be satisfied unless and until it also goes into details of greater relevance. If some schools are able to do it, that doesn't mean the whole country is ready for it, and you cannot create another divide in the country. Therefore, the major issue that should be discussed is how the weaker schools, the so-called Sarkari schools, so-called the middle level schools, they will manage this, and how the governments will come, how the society will come, how the teachers will cope up. So these are the major issues. Some schools maybe they are able to do. The children also from the groups that they have the necessary equipment. But I am thinking of children who need midday meals, who need support of all types, who need free textbooks. How is the country going to manage that part? And there, this is the test of the envisioning capacity of our teachers, our educationists, our principals. You cannot say that my school is okay and I am happy. No, if your neighbor is unhappy, if most of the children are not happy, and I have interacted with a large number of children, their parents, and they are very much worried about this.
Mr. Rajput,
so we have to find out solutions for them primarily.
You've actually raised a very valid concern, but as far as the access to technology is concerned, Tier 3 and Tier 4 districts and cities are actually battling this concern. And I would actually like to bring in Vamsi on this. Considering the internet penetration in India is not so high, how do you think we as a country can deal with this infrastructure challenge?
Thanks for having me on the show, and I really second some of the sentiments shared by the panelists here, especially Uttara, when you're saying the schools are quintessential and we can't replace that with any or fully replace them with online interventions. I see these things coexisting. As far as Vedantu is concerned, because we primarily operate in after-school tutoring space, and we partnered during this last 3-4 months. We partnered with few schools, providing them some training for their teachers, because we have been teaching online for 4-5 years. There's some nuances. We trained them, and by doing that, we really faced these challenges which just spoke about the internet penetration and in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. So yes, although having said that, the internet penetration in India is still catching up, but there's a lot of inroads which has happened over the last 2-3 years, especially given the fact with the Geo coming in, the broadband connectivity is good. I think indigenous solutions around how do you optimize this delivery, which requires bandwidth, and how do you optimize that for low bandwidth Indian conditions is, I think, key. And a lot of Indian companies, including us, are doing some work in that direction.
That's a very key valid point. And I'd actually like to ask Uttara also for her inputs. What do you think with regards to what Vamsi has just said?
So I completely agree with him that, let's all understand online education is here to stay. But I think now we want to focus more on how to learn rather than what to learn. What to learn, content is available, but how are children going to learn is something that everybody needs to rethink. And I think as Indians, we are very creative. We are traditionally very creative and innovative, lot of people. And the way teachers have really, come up to this, whether it is private schools, whether it is public schools. I was reading the other day about somebody who put these gramophones and had the lessons read out to the children in the villages. I think you can have so many ideas, but learning has to go on. You can't say because the school is shut and we have to be shut, learning has to stop. So we have to innovate.
Yes.
Absolutely innovate. And I think solutions will come the way they have at the moment. I'm sure we as a community can share and find solutions for all of this.
Absolutely. Creative ideation is perhaps the need of the hour. But Vamsi, for an online learning platform like Vedantu, there has barely been a transition. Do you think now is the moment in the sun for edtech or online platforms like yours or Byju's that already existed? Also, what should be the role of parents to aid better virtual education?
Definitely so. I mean, the strongest tailwinds we guys are facing in terms of all our students coming to the platform, students studying, be it free, be it paid, all of that has increased massively over the last 3-4 months. In fact, the numbers are close to a million today. Million students are coming on the platform and studying every month, which used to be around 100,000 probably in the month of Jan. So the things have really improved, and that's for Vedantu, I'm sure for all other online education companies as well. But having said that, we all have a responsibility, and I think we all need to play that very well. What we have done during this situation is we've not just made the platform free, we have openly partnered with schools, and we are giving our platform for free for schools to use it through their own teachers. And that's exactly where I was mentioning that some of the joint learnings we developed.
Absolutely, that's a great initiative, and that's the kind of synergy which perhaps online platforms can provide schools, or traditional schooling rather. On that note, let me also bring in Jiten Jain, who's been very patiently waiting so far. Thank you so much, Mr. Jain. You can perhaps throw light on a very crucial concern that most parents have, and that is, what are the security risks and protection issues of online learning?
Look, I've been a votary of online education because, I'm a cyber expert, and I started learning cyber when there were no degrees in cyber in India. So a good part of my professional education has come in digital mode. However, in my personal opinion, online learning or digital courses are good as an add-on. They cannot be the primary mode of learning. And what pandemic has forced us is to, probably find a way where we can mainstream the online education, because the physical schooling is not possible today. And that, creates so many questions. There is lack of infrastructure. There is lack of accessibility. There are not everyone home, especially in rural India, has good internet connection. People don't have laptops or computers. In some families, there is only one mobile phone, which could be used for Skype or Zoom. There are 3 children, and they have classes at the same time. So, to be very crude and honest, this entire digital mode of education can never replace traditional form of education. This is an elitist concept. It is good for developing countries. It may be good for, urban cities in India like Delhi, Mumbai and stuff. It is good for rich people. But when you talk about 80% of our population, 80% of our students who study in government schools, lower strata of public schools in, tier 2 or 3 or 4 cities, in the municipality schools, this is a distant dream. And because you are forcing them to go on to, borrow parents' mobile phone, just log on to Skype and do something and join the class, the biggest risk is of overexposure because of lack of understanding of technology. And even if you could make the entire, even if the government was to give a laptop free, mobile phone free internet connection to every home and every child in the country, still there would be a challenge. Online mode is good as long as the age of a student is more than 15 or 16, where he understands, where he is mature enough to understand certain things. But for teenagers, it carries a huge risk of digital exposure, accidentally getting onto porn sites. All these online learning sites sometimes accidentally show porn ads. So there is a huge risk, embarrassment. And there are other challenges which are rising now: bullying of teachers, bullying of fellow classmates. So we can go on to this, but my final argument is that it is an elitist concept.
It is an elitist concept, is what Jiten has to say, and perhaps, as you rightly mentioned, a more prudent approach to online learning is going to help us get there. Let me go to Uttara right now. Uttara, desperate times call for desperate measures. How do you react to the cancellation of CBSE and ICSE board examinations, and where does this leave the board students and the college cutoffs? Are the students anxious?
So like I said, health is primary. So in that respect, it is a good decision. Because to have so many children collecting, we were all extremely worried about how it would happen, and it would have created a logistic nightmare, honestly, even if one child in a center had by chance tested positive or something. So it's a welcome gesture that the boards have been cancelled, and I'm sure that everything that will happen will be in favor of the children. Everybody understands that the situation is something that nobody has ever seen before. So whatever marking schemes the boards have come up with are probably for the best. And I'm sure even for college admissions, the children will get that, that little bit of a favorable situation where they should not worry too much. Because this is not something that anybody can really change. It is not something that anybody can just switch off. So when we have to live with it, I think it's important that all of us adjust to it and do what is best possible in the situation. So if you ask me, I'm as a head of school, and I know I speak for many of my colleagues, we do feel the boards could not have been held now. And then they have given the option of doing it later. So that option is still available to the children. So it is a pro-child solution, and I'm sure things will work out better. And Akanksha, here I would really like to add that somewhere we need to redefine success. We need to ask children, what are your dreams today? It is not about college admissions of 99% and 100% anymore. Let me tell you that. A lot of children, a lot of people have been forced to rethink their definition of success.
That's a holistic approach that you've mentioned. Let me bring in Jiten on this point. We just heard what Uttara had to say. Uttara has made a very, very valid point. She's saying that it is the overall definition of success and how we define success for our students that is also to be reviewed, considering, you know, they've already been put under a lot of pressure. The talking point, of course, was the cancellation of the CBSE board examinations.
Look, you know, this recent decision of, you know, and you know, I don't blame CBSE or the courts because there is no other option. You can't hold the exam, so you have to find some way for evaluation and to have a comparative evaluation because college admissions have to take place. The 12 boards have not started, but you know, there is some way, some sort of evaluation. But you know, to say that we will do average marking, that is fine. We will consider your pre-board examination results, that is also okay, but there is a challenge because, you know, the marking system across India is so varied and different that it will throw altogether different challenges. Like if you go to Bihar, the average marking of a student, you know, 70 to 85%, you know, is good enough. But if you go in South, they mark freely. They sometimes in 92%, 93% also in ICSE board. And if all of this pool have to go to a similar college in North Delhi or say Delhi University for a, you know, admission in one single college, you can't compare because simply because of the strictness of marking system. What ICSE and CBSE brought on the table was a uniformity of marking and evaluation. But if that is gone, I think you know, we will have a Pandora box which will open out of litigation. It is good to have evaluation, marking, or you know, pre-board consideration for 10th because you will continue in the same school. But the moment you are talking about a college admission, especially the students of 12th class, I don't think pre-board examination or you know, considering average results of previous exams is a good idea.
Actually, these are unprecedented times that we are witnessing, and perhaps now is the time which calls for an overhauling of the entire system. On that note, I'm sorry, I'm running out of time, Jiten, but I'll have to bring in Vamsi also on this. Vamsi, can online learning platforms also encompass disciplines like law that require nuanced perspectives, free-flowing conversations and debates, and in fact lose flavor when done online?
Definitely yes, though it's just a matter of time, and as you rightly pointed out yourself, some creative innovations and many of it is already being done. So if you just look at some of the best online delivery channels, they try to encompass the best of the interactions which happen in an offline class as well. And this I can tell you because I myself operated in offline for almost like 6-7 years before, you know, doing this. So some of the best interactions in terms of like how is the interactions being done, some of the point which was being made by one of my co-panelists, like how do you ensure that the kid is engaged. So it's a lot of technology around facial recognition and which is passive, not active, which you can ensure that the kid is actually in the class and, you know, is attentive. We can even take it a level further and say that, you know, is the kid really enjoying the class? And we can track these things. And I think the data it provides, I would say we need to think about it from a new way. We should not think about how do we replace offline with online. We should think about how do we reimagine online, and that's when the innovations will come.
Uttara, we are all aware that online learning is not just about speaking into the microphone at one end and connecting a laptop and listening in on the other. It has its own limitations too. How challenging has it been for the teachers in terms of communication with students?
You know, I would like to publicly applaud all the teachers of the world for the way they have kind of absolutely gone online within days.
Absolutely.
It's not been easy. Believe me, it's not been easy. And most of us, you know, were from a generation where technology was something that was not so easy. We were adapting to it and we were using it because we thought it is something that, you know, helps us a bit. But today it is the only way. And I have teachers from the age group of 20 to 50 to 60 who have just adapted and taken on and tried to make learning more and more interactive. And everybody is trying their best, you know, and we are trying to put our children at the center of it. Teachers are spending so much time getting trained and retrained and creating a climate for a classroom. You know, a classroom is all about a climate, and creating that through a screen is not easy at all. But what we figured out is that if you have that connect and you keep on, you know, reaching out to the children and make them feel that, yes, we are there for you. I think today children need adults who understand that they are there for the children.
Absolutely.
The children understand that. because this stress, nobody has really looked at it from the point of a child. It's about, for parents, I understand, it's about their work and so much of things at home, so many other concerns. We are all going through a lot of stress. I understand that. But a child is not able to understand that. And if we kind of portray it on our children, I don't think that's
very
correct.
rightly said. The child's viewpoint is also to be considered. It's in fact a major consideration. Now, Mr. Rajput, what will be the new criteria for a child's examination? How challenging will it be in terms of value assessment? Do we now need new policies for a new education model?
There are several other aspects which have to be examined in the broader perspective. If the schools reopen at any stage, how do you bring children out of demoralization, uncertainty, and the concerns that they have developed over these years? You have social problems, you have emotional issues, you have issues with parents, and you see so many things are disturbing about teachers. Several of the teachers are in great difficulty. Now the issue is, you cannot see this whole situation in an isolated manner. There may be success stories at many places, but it is the policy that has to come up in a very pragmatic manner. How schools will be supported, how they will be assisted, how teachers shall be re-prepared. They have to be retrained to this system. I have seen some of the schools just copying, taking a photograph of a page and sending it on WhatsApp to the children. And they say this is online learning. One more caution is necessary for schools. You see, when they open and distance learning, which began with correspondence education earlier, it has been treated as second-rate learning. This should not happen now. We have to ensure quality. Ensuring quality means you go to teachers and teacher educators. That means you have to focus on teacher education institutions. If you do not focus on teachers, if teachers are demoralized, if their salaries are halved, or if they are uncertain about their future, things will become very, very tough and very complicated. That are the things to be seen. We have challenges and we can find out solutions to every challenge.
On that note, also to enlighten our viewers in terms of the government initiatives, Mr. Rajput, the Ministry of Human Resource Development, UGC and NCERT have created several platforms to enable online education in India. Do tell us more about it, and how are they aiding students who are unable to join top institutions?
No, a lot of platforms have been created. Teacher training also has been initiated. Some 15 lakh teachers were trained by the National Open Schooling, National Institute of Open School. All that is fine. My difficulty is that government is already planning on those lines, that they will need more resource inputs, how to maintain sanitation in the schools, how to ensure that parents are confident that children will be safe in schools. A new work culture has to develop. And everybody has to be alert. You cannot run a school with one teacher or two teachers. So in my mind, my focus is those schools, 60 to 70% schools, which will find it very difficult to go online, which will find it very difficult to have full quota of teachers and even the basic facilities. That type of things, now a huge support has to come from state governments, from the central government, and also from other sources. People should come forward. Those organizations which can afford, those well-known schools who have the resources, they should also take up some schools.
That's a very valid point that you've made, sir. Very valid point. Let me begin with Uttara, your closing thoughts.
I agree with my other panelists on a lot of things that they've said make a lot of sense. And the best part of online education is that your limitation of space has been removed. So if we have to do, if we have to have a more sharing environment created, I think private schools can handhold a lot of public schools, and children can actually attend classes. Why not? Why not look at it completely differently and look at sharing of resources?
All right, Uttara, I'm running short of time. I'll have to quickly go across to Jiten on that. Jiten, your closing thoughts.
I think, the challenges of affordability, reach, lack of infrastructure they will stay at least for a couple of years. But there is one, there are a couple of resources government has at its disposal which can be scaled to ensure that we are able to aid government schools and rural areas in best possible way. That is the radio and the terrestrial broadcast of Doordarshan educational channels. I think the dedicated radio channels and Doordarshan channels on terrestrial band would really help solve the challenges of affordability and reach for a lot of people in rural areas. For the urban cities, we can have different resources like there are online platforms like Juice and this. So my whole final suggestion would be that scale up the existing capacities we have instead of investing in the new.
Scale up the existing infrastructural capacities. Vamsi, your closing thoughts?
I'm pretty excited with the current times. Really paves way for innovation. I think one big opportunity which I think we didn't talk a lot about is for great schools. This is an opportunity to really expand because now they are not constrained by geography or neither, as Putra was saying, by physical constraint. So this will breed a lot of competition wherein schools will not just be local now, will actually be pan-city or in fact pan-nation. And that actually opens up very interesting opportunities.
On that note, it's a quick wrap. Thank you so much to all four of you. It's been a huge honor to have you on our panel discussion today. And with that, it's a wrap. Let me end with a quote by Albert Einstein. We cannot solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. And so here's hoping we build back better through this crisis. Thank you so much for watching our special show, Hard Reset, Education in a Post-COVID World.